This is Katie, co-host of Coffee with Keith and Katie. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Bryce Burge, host of Your Soccer Passport here on Public House Media. After this episode, come join us on a trip around the soccer world as we discuss club and country every Tuesday. Stamp your soccer passport by subscribing on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your Public House Media podcasts. And thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Throughout history, the course of sports has been shaped by one thing: the fans.
From the moments you never dreamed of,
has saved the USA's life in this World Cup! Paul, the runner! Loose ball! It's good! Gonzaga! The flipper still fits!
To the moments that still give you nightmares.
Behind the bag! It gets through Buckner! Here comes Knight and the Mets win it! He's in! Patriots win the Super Bowl! Brady has his fifth!
through the good and the bad, fans have helped change the games we watch and the players we love.
They may not be the most logical people.
You are a factory of sadness! I'll see you Sunday.
But they know their teams better than anybody.
They'll blow in the ninth.
You may not always see them, but you know where to find them.
After all, there's nothing quite like the view from the cheap seats.
Broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network.
Grab a chair and enjoy all there is in
The cheap seats.
Welcome back, everybody. It is the Cheap Seats on Public House Media, presented by Squadcast. I am Keith Haney, along with my co-host Max Wolpoff for this Wednesday edition of the show. I wasn't around last week, but of course Christian Heimel stepped in, and he did a great job as always. But back with my great friend Max here for the Wednesday edition of the show. Max, how have you been doing?
I've been doing great. Don't worry, Christian did a fine job. We stuck with his strengths of baseball, and more baseball. But there have been some happenings in the football world that, hey, I mean, there's a lot to get to with regards to the upcoming National Football League season.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my strengths is football, NFL football, college football. I'm all about the sport on the gridiron. Speaking of which, Adrian Peterson, let's jump right into it. He's a Redskin now, Max, kind of joining your neck of the woods, and playing for the Redskins. How do you feel about that?
Number one, never call the Redskins my team again.
Who is your team?
If you really must know, I am a part owner of the Green Bay Packers.
Really?
Yes, really. You didn't.
That's cool. I didn't know you were a Packer fan.
I've brought this up on previous episodes, I believe.
Get out of here.
Yes, I have. Well, maybe not with you. Maybe this was with Jeff back when he was my co-host. But yeah, I have brought up that at the last stock sale, I decided, you know what? I'm going to buy a share because why not?
But so you're a fan. You didn't just decide to buy a share. You're a fan.
Well, yeah,
of the Packers.
Benefit
awesome.
As long as I can remember, and I really don't know why. Anyway, I've already derailed this conversation. Let's get back to Adrian Peterson. The number one reason this is even happening for the Redskins is because they've been super unlucky, is a kind way to put it, with injuries to the running back position. Darius Geis tearing his ACL in the first preseason game was bad. And now, well, they got somebody who they know can run, but this is definitely not their long-term plan.
Right. Yeah. Of course, he's a quick fix. I think that's what he knows he is, and he's just trying to play as much football as he possibly can before his career has to come to an end. This is the third team he's been with in really one season. Right. He hasn't even played a season. So he was with the Saints, the Cardinals, and now he's with the Redskins before he even starts the season. So three teams in really, 2 years, but really one season. And it's definitely not what I expected to to happen to Adrian Peterson at the end of his career.
Man, what's funny to me with his what's funny to me with his career is that if he does get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, he'll have that asterisk, like, you know how sometimes you look at a Hall of Fame player like, yes, he was always a blank, and then you realize, wait, he played for what team? That he's going to have that. This whole season is going to be one of those, wait a second, when was he a Redskin?
Yep. Kind of like how Deion Sanders was a Raven.
Huh? I didn't even know that.
Oh, you remember that? Deion Sanders was a Raven, and he was number 37 because that's how old he was.
Nope, I don't remember that at all.
Yep. Deion Sanders was a was a Raven. Nope. I'm trying to think of other ones. I think Joe Namath was a Charger, right?
I'm going to choose to trust your knowledge on that one.
I think he was. He played for some other team other than the Jets later on. And, of course, everybody knows that Brett Favre also played for the Vikings, but a lot of people forget that Favre played for the
Jets.
For the Jets that one year.
No, he wasn't a Charger. Other California team. He was a Ram.
Ram. All right, well, same difference.
Other California team that doesn't matter. Okay, then.
Yeah. But, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Adrian Peterson can do. I'm sure he'll do exactly what everybody's expecting him to do. He'll have a couple of good runs here and there. He'll probably average 3 yards a carry. With about 7 touchdowns on the year. That's what I'm guessing. I'm guessing that's what people are expecting out of him. And you know what? Good for him that he's just continuing to eke it out as much as he can until he eventually has to hang him up for good.
Hey, take your money while you can get it, especially in a sport that ravages your body like football. Take the money while you have the chance. You're not going to be able to.
Absolutely.
You're not going to be able to play much longer. Take it while you got it. Now,
yep.
I want to bring in another story here that was kind of weird when it broke, because the big detail of the story is very much buried within the body of it. It was a great expose article written by Chelsea Janes of the Washington Post about the Washington Nationals, their bullpen, and their season. And if you listened to last week's episode, you heard the illogical complaints I had that the Nationals might be able to make it to the playoffs. And the last week of games have basically proven me wrong. Part of the reason I am wrong is because of what happened the day of the MLB trade deadline, where Sean Kelly came into a game with the score 25-1 in favor of the Nationals. He gives up a 3-run home run. He spikes his glove on the ground. He looks straight into the Nationals dugout and then marches back and finishes the inning. So, according to this article, General Manager Mike Rizzo of the Nationals went down into the clubhouse and nearly got into a physical confrontation with Kelly. They had to be separated by a few teammates, and it was so frustrating, Rizzo eventually designated Kelly for assignment before trading him to the Oakland Athletics. That big detail came with about 7 paragraphs left in the story. It was a very buried detail, but everyone's blowing up the, oh my God, the GM almost fought a player detail.
Why would he have to fight a player in the first place? Because he was not 100% buttoned up on the mound? I don't understand. I don't understand how A and B equals C here. I don't. What's that?
Neither do I.
Yeah, I don't understand the story. The two could be completely unrelated.
Man, what fascinates me most about the Nationals bullpen is that heading into this season, it was supposed to be the steady rock. It was supposed to be the easy rudder of the ship. It was going to steer everything and everything would be fine. Instead, it's been a broken rudder. It has been shifty at best. nothing has gone right. And just when the rest of the offense was finally clicking, just when Zimmerman was getting things back, just when Murphy was hitting his stride, just when Rendon and Turner and Harper were all clicking, and even Juan Soto's having a Rookie of the Year caliber season, it's falling apart.
Yeah, and that's just a sign that things have to change one way or another. They obviously they had their couple of seasons and they were in the playoffs, and you thought that they'd make a run there, and obviously things have been slowly declining. They were hanging around there for a while, but obviously things have slowly declined for them. So obviously changes have to be made. If you have, for whatever reason, if you have a GM getting into a physical altercation with anyone on the team for any reason, I think there are signs that something has to be done internally there to shake the team up a little bit.
Yeah, that physical confrontation was where the comment "you're in" or "you're in the way" came from. And I'm starting to think here. Again, this is pure speculation here, but maybe there's more in the way than you might think, Mr. Rizzo.
Yeah.
Anyhow, Keith, I think we need to reintroduce ourselves to an interesting football name.
Yeah, Charlie Weis Jr. I was very interested to learn that Charlie Weis Jr., he is the offensive coordinator for FAU. There's nothing weird about that story in and of itself. Charlie Weis, obviously a great offensive coordinator and a very rich man, thanks to Notre Dame's contract that he had. But Charlie Weis Jr. is only 25 years old, and he is the offensive coordinator of a Division I college football program. Of course, Florida Atlantic under Lane Kiffin. 25 years old. Max, what do you think?
Well, what really fascinated me was how he clinched the job interview. So the reporting done by Sports Illustrated, basically, it spells it out in the first couple of paragraphs. It's about how Lane Kiffin, he basically interviewed a recent college graduate and said, you know what? I want to give this kid a chance. That kid was Charlie Weis Jr., and he had been told he had a photographic memory. During the interview, Kiffin handed Weis his driver's license and his credit card for 3 minutes. Then he got the cards back and asked him questions about the cards. What street do I live on? What's the expiration date of my credit card? What's the last 4 digits? Why are you doing this? Why? Do you have any idea how much damage someone can do with that information?
Especially when you hear the guy that you're giving it to has a photographic memory. I mean, you really have to give the job to him then, right?
I think at that point, if you deny that person the job, you're accepting a lot of risk.
Right. But it's important to note that this interview this was a number of years ago when Kiffin was interviewing Weis Jr. for a job as an analyst with the Alabama Crimson Tide football program. So they have a history here. Lane Kiffin says he likes to say that they're 28-1 together and 0-1 without each other. Obviously, 0-1 being that one national championship game that Lane Kiffin was no longer around for the Crimson Tide. I think this is a very interesting move. Obviously, the perfect situation for Weis Jr. because you're not going to get the opportunity to be an offensive coordinator at a Division I program at the age 25, hardly anywhere else. But he has a great relationship with Lane Kiffin. It's a small program and a program that you can do this at, and it's a typical Lane Kiffin move. So it'll be interesting to see how it works out for them and to see if a guy this young can get it done.
Man, I'm ready. I'm so ready for college football to come back because the craziness and stupidity of sports can all be wrapped up in the college football season. You've got upsets galore. You've got crazy teams that probably shouldn't play the top contenders playing the top contenders, having a chance to win. And pretty much always in the first week of the season, everything we think heading into the season is proved wrong. and I'm ready for it.
Goes completely out the window.
Oh, I am so ready for the chaos of it. Bring it on.
You'll read the magazines, you'll read all the articles, and you'll see all that, and it's never what you think it's going to be. All right. Well, coming up in the following segment, we're going to completely try, at least I'm going to completely try, to mess up the entire basically sports system that we have in America as we know it. It's the conferences. I want to disband all conferences in all sports. No AFC or NFC in football. When it comes to the playoffs, no Eastern or Western Conference in the NBA. All of that good stuff. Coming up in the following segments, of course, this show is presented by Squadcast FM on Public House Media. Don't forget to listen to our iTunes and Google Podcasts and more. We will be right back for more on the Cheap Seats.
This is Kim Meyer, the host of Choose to Rise here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Choose to Rise, where we talk about living with positive mindsets, how to increase our confidence, building our faith, and living out our life on purpose. A new show comes out via podcast every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And if you want to catch the episode live instead, stop by Public House Media around 6:45 Central Standard Time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday as well. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of Choose to Rise. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Welcome back, everyone, on the Cheap Seats presented by Squadcast FM on Public House Media. I am Keith Haney, Max Wolpoff, joining you for this Wednesday edition. The first segment, we talked about a lot of things going on in the D.C. area, Max, which was right up your alley. Talked about Adrian Peterson going to Washington. Rizzo, the GM of the Nationals, decided to get in a physical altercation with one of his players, which is always good to hear.
Almost. They didn't actually come to blows. They came close.
I want to know what the scene was in that locker room. So was it like a let me at him, knowing that you're going to get held back, so you really don't have to, you know?
Boy, was this one of those stupid street fights where the guy yells, "Hold me back," and has no intention of actually being held back?
Just yelling bro at each other from like 10 feet away. What's up, bro? Come on, bro.
I doubt it was actually like that, and I have zero information to go on, so I'm going to stop right there.
I like the idea. I like the idea of two guys just broing out in the locker room there without really fighting. All right. Well, speaking of sports, as this is a sports show, why not? We come to the point in the show where, Max, you and I, we have to have a discussion. And I am to the point where in professional sports, at least when it comes to NFL, NBA, MLB, and NHL, that it's time to do away with the conference format, at least when it comes to the playoffs. I'm willing to work with anybody on this, but playoffs come, no conferences, top teams play the bottom seeds regardless of what conference or division you're in, and you decide, and I think that's the purest way to do it, to come up with a real champion. Before I go into this any deeper, Max, let me get your initial thoughts.
My initial thought is, what in the world are you doing to yourself? Like, part of the reason conferences exist is to give a measure of organization to a lot of teams in a lot of different places. Like, I'm trying to really figure out how this could have worked in the last season for a lot of the four major sports, and it just creates nightmares and travel headaches for a lot of different teams. Part of the great thing about knowing who you're going to play is knowing what plane you have to hop on to go where at the end of the night.
Okay, I can see that.
Right.
But you're still going to play.
I know. I want to hold my opinion until I hear a little more from you. What will conference-less sports look like to Keith Haney?
All right. Well, one thing that we could pretty much largely keep the same just to get out of the way is the NFL, because it's a sport that has 32 teams and you only play 16 teams in a season. So that's one that you're going to have to keep pretty much the same. You can keep divisions and you can keep conferences. You could play the whole regular season as you do now. However, once the playoffs come, no conference. The best team that does not have the first round bye plays the wild card team. So if that's the Patriots, if they don't win their division, if they don't have the first round bye, say the Patriots play the Saints in the first round. That way you don't have the Saints benefiting from a weak NFC or anything like that. If you can't get by, you can't get by. If you have to play the Patriots in the AFC the first round, you do not have a weak conference to hide behind. I think that leaves for the worst teams being eliminated, or at least, hey, trying to make a real upset in the first round of the playoffs. So really, is for the NFL, for me, it's just the playoff format of how that goes. Worst teams play the best teams right off the bat. No conferences. We'll see how it goes from there. The NBA, NHL, and MLB, I think you could completely change the regular season format as it is now. I think a lot of people might like this for baseball. With 30 teams in Major League Baseball, you could play every other 29 teams 5 times apiece. All right. One team, you play one team 6 times. That brings it up to 146 total games. You shorten the MLB season by a couple games there, from 162 to 146. I know a lot of people would appreciate that, because a lot of people think that the Major League Baseball season is incredibly long and they get bored with it because they know that those early games in the season really don't account for much, and nobody ever remembers that if you're a game out in August, nobody remembers, well, we really could have won that game back in April. Nobody thinks of that.
I do.
So, well, you're one of the rare ones, Max.
Oh, I'm very aware of how rare I am.
So I think Major League Baseball, I think that one would work the best in this scenario, because you shorten the season up and you still play all other 29 teams 5 times. I don't think that's a bad format. The NHL, 31 teams. You lengthen the NHL season by 8 games. You play you play all other 30 teams 3 times. That's 90 games. All you have to do, Max, get rid of the preseason.
Oh boy. Boy. I'm going to save my bullets on this one. Keep going.
Oh, I will. No, I know that I'm trying to be somewhat of a pioneer here, so I know that this may sound, kooky to a lot of people, but hey, Lois and Clark going off to explore the world, going off to the west of it, that seemed weird to a lot of people too. I'm a pioneer, Max. I'm trying to.
I fail to understand the connection of how going off to explore the yet undiscovered territory of the Louisiana Purchase correlates to dismantling the organization of professional sports.
We're going off to explore the undiscovered territory of non-conferences, Max. That's what we're doing.
That is a stretch at best for an analogy, but please keep going.
And then the NBA, we do something very similar with the NBA that we did to the NHL. 30 teams in the NBA, you play the other 29 teams 3 times. To make it an even that you play one other team 4, everybody 3, one team 4, total of 88 games. What do? You just lose some games in the preseason there. More games that matter. You're really not adding any games to the schedule. You're just adding more games that matter. So you don't tell me that it's a health issue for these guys or anything like that. They're already playing, when it comes to the playoffs and the preseason, they're already playing well over 90 games in the NBA, NHL, and Major League Baseball. Hey, I'm actually doing the players a favor. I'm saying you don't have to play as many. And again, to reiterate the NFL, we can keep that regular season the same. Just when it comes to the playoffs, open the whole thing up. In a nutshell, basic bullet points, I'm saying that's what we do.
Okay. I have a genuine question for you, Keith.
Let's hear it. I have a genuine answer for you.
Okay. Do you like seeing players get injured?
Of course not, Max.
Okay. All right. This is my number one initial complaint about the extension season portion of your argument. How do you expect player health to stay the same or improve when you extend the NHL season, which is already known for how brutal it is, and you extend the NBA season? And I'll bring up a different point with the NBA later, but how do you expect player health to factor into this?
Well, let's look at this. You could, with an extended schedule, you could expand the roster size slightly in order to compensate for that. Why not?
Interesting.
And to say that player health is a huge concern. Like I said, you're already playing a number of preseason games now. I know the stars don't play in a lot of those preseason games, and that's a time for the other guys to show what they're worth. But hey, if you're going to get rid of more preseason games to add more games that matter, like I said, you're really not adding any games to the schedule. You're still going to have just as many games on the schedule. You're just getting rid of the games that don't matter in favor for games that do matter. And if that means expanding a roster size slightly, why not?
I could tell you why not for the NHL world, and that's because of the salary cap. I mean, the NBA is a land of silly money and funny money, so I don't think the salary cap matters all that much there.
Okay. But I don't see, but we could use that injury argument all day. I don't see anyone saying, you know what, in order for these guys to stay more healthy, we should cut all the playoff series from 7 games down to 5 for player health. If you were really concerned about player health, you wouldn't make every series 7 games. You'd make it a best of 3, or something like that. You can make arguments to make the game healthier for players all day. You don't have to play as many games in the playoffs.
Now,
I mean, that's number one.
I have a different question for you in regards to the NBA. How do you handle players saying, you know what, this is game 30 out of 90 or whatever. I don't need to play this. I'm going to take a few games off. I'm going to take a week off. How do you handle the rest? Because that's been one of the core things that Adam Silver has tried to figure out.
Well, you're going to have guys taking games off now this is my part of the argument. If you're going from 82 games to 90 games, what are you adding? An extra week and a half or so?
Just about. I mean,
about a week and a half. You're going to have guys taking games off in every sport for a number of reasons. Baseball, you're already playing 162 games. Guys are going to take games off unless you're, Cal Ripken Jr., as we were talking about a couple of weeks ago. NHL guys take games off. NBA guys obviously take games off. LeBron James isn't playing, isn't playing in early December against the Milwaukee Bucks on a Sunday afternoon. He's not playing those games anymore. And a lot of those guys, excuse me, had a tickle in my throat there. A lot of those guys are no longer playing those games. So to say that, adding a couple of extra games to the regular season, is going to increase that. It might increase that, but like I said, lose the preseason games that don't matter in favor for just make those games, add more games to the regular season. and you're going to see more bench guys getting playtime. But hey, what's wrong with that?
I don't think anything's wrong with more bench players getting time. I still believe that you're going to decrease the value of each game if you add more games.
I would absolutely agree with that.
Okay, well, how about television advertising revenue? I understand there's more games to choose from if you're an advertiser. However, there's now 90 games to choose from. You can pick your spots. Those midweek games on a school night or a work night suddenly become even more devalued.
Yeah, I guess you could make that argument. Well, in the NBA, it would only be 88 games, so you're only expanding the schedule by 6 games. The NHL would be the one, and it'd be 90 games. Now, let's be honest. In America, those advertising spots in the NHL, they're not worth all that much, anyways. But
they're not worth as much as they are in Canada. You are correct about that.
Right, but you could say that decreases the value, but again, you're not going to have great value, and I don't think you're decreasing the value so much, going from 82 games to 90 games in the NHL or 82 games to 88 games in the NBA. You already have so many games that a lot of people aren't paying attention to. So to say that, an advertiser is going to look at this schedule and say, well, this extra game on a Wednesday, against a non-divisional opponent or whatever is really going to matter that much. And that's the thing that I think that increases it more than anything. You no longer have this isn't a team that anybody really cares about. So this is, who cares about the Blackhawks playing the Kings on a Wednesday in the middle of the season? You really should now, because there are no divisions, there are no conferences. All these games that seemingly don't matter are games that all of a sudden very much do matter.
All right. Now on to, I think, the meat of your argument, the playoff format.
You know what? Before we go to the playoff format, use that as a teaser. I think we will take a quick break and come back with that one, Max. Of course, you are listening to the Cheap Seats presented by Squadcast FM on Public House Media. Don't forget to listen to our podcast and a lot of other podcasts from Public House Media on iTunes and Google Podcasts and more. And don't forget to weigh in on the poll question on our Facebook page. What's the poll question? Hey, you've been listening to it for the past 15 minutes. Should we abandon the entire conference format as a whole in American sports? Max and I have been talking about it. You have a chance to talk about it too and let us know how you feel. All that and more coming up on the Cheap Seats.
How's it going, everybody? This is Keith.
And Katie, hosts of Coffee with Keith and Katie, here on Public House Media.
Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. When you're done here, I hope you'll check out our show, Coffee with Keith and Katie,
where we talk about our lives and relationship over a cup of coffee.
A new episode airs on Facebook Live every Monday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of Coffee with Keith and Katie.
Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Welcome back to the Cheap Seats, everyone. Keith Haney, Max Wolpup on this Wednesday edition. It's already been a wild Wednesday, and we haven't even gotten to that point of the show. Max, I've been rambling on for the last couple minutes about how I think that we should completely throw the current format of American sports that we have in the 4 major sports out the window and go with a completely conferenceless schedule when it comes to the regular season for most sports, when it comes to the playoff for all sports. Of course, don't forget that the show is presented by Squadcast FM on Public House Media. You can catch our show on Spotify now, so check it out there. Of course, and on iTunes and Google Podcasts. Don't forget to check out the merchandise store as well. If you like our logo, you can get our cool Cheap Seats logo on a number of things. On a coffee cup, obviously that's one of my go-tos. Of course, a nice T-shirt or things like that. makes for a great present, or hey, a great present to yourself. That's at thephmedia.com. All right, Max, before we went to the break, you were going to get to your argument for the playoffs and how my ideas for this are completely idiotic. I think that's where you were going with it.
All right. Okay. You're putting a lot of words in my mouth there, but I want to ask a question first, Keith. Can you name the 6 divisions in the NBA?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, this is probably the sport where the divisions matter the least, so I don't blame anybody who's listening if you can find, all right, what team plays in what division again? All right, Keith, let's see what you can get. They're all geographically named, so you have a pretty good chance of getting most of these right, probably.
Central?
Yes, there is a Central. You got 1.
That's 1. That's my area.
Yep.
Pacific?
Yep, that's 2.
Atlantic?
Yep, that's 3.
Southeast?
Yes, you got it. All right, keep going. You got 2 more to get.
Northwest?
Yep, and 1 more.
The Southwest.
You, my friend, are a champion. You got it all.
Boom. All right.
Now,
I was pretty confident, but I definitely had to think about it for a second.
I know, because the divisions in basketball, I could not have named them for you unless I was looking at a list.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't tell you who was in the Atlantic Division with the Celtics unless I physically had the list in front of me.
Now, I want to be clear that was not planned. Max just sprung that on me, so I have no lists in front of me. So,
all right,
I want to say that I did that honestly.
Well, you did, and I'm very happy you did. To begin with the playoff format, the NBA already does 1 through 8 in their conference. Are you proposing 1 through 16 now?
I am. I'm proposing just one massive 1 through 16 format. No, not 1 through 8 for each conference. No conferences, 1 through 16. Boom, you got it.
All right. Now, I got a question. Who was the 16 seed in the NBA this year? Who was the last team in?
Had to have been a team in the Eastern Conference. Must have been the 8th team in the Eastern Conference.
The Washington Wizards.
Okay.
Now, this isn't exactly my point, but Houston would play the Wizards.
Okay.
In the first round, instead of Washington playing Toronto. I'm looking at this thinking the cross-conference matchups could create for some awesomeness. It could also create for travel headaches.
Yeah. I'm not really concerned about the travel headaches for that. I mean, these guys, let's be real, these guys are professional. They've been traveling the entire year, an entire season for years, most of them. I mean, even if you're a rookie, all you've done is travel in college. Now, of course, college hockey is very confined to the Midwest and the Northeast, have you. But a lot of these guys, whether they're in the AHL or college or they're in those they're in those leagues in Canada, all they do is travel. So I can understand that if you have to go across the country for an early division in the playoffs, I can understand how that would be a pain. But I don't think that would be a reasonable argument to not go that route.
I'm more looking at this from the logistical point of view of trying to just schedule everything. Because when you especially when you get into air travel, a lot of things can go wrong. And I bring up an example of the Las Vegas Aces, the WNBA team trying to get to Washington to play the Mystics. They missed their flight from Vegas to DC got canceled. They had to get on flights to Dallas. Then they had to split the team in 2 groups, take flights from Dallas to DC, get in at 2 to 3 in the morning, and then they eventually didn't show up for the game. They forfeited because they were too tired to play.
Wow.
Now, hang on. You're probably wondering, how did this affect their playoff chances? The Aces missed the playoffs basically by that game.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I did not know that story. So that's hey, did you know this? For me, I'll make to counteract that your point. I will say the travel accommodations for the WNBA and the NHL, NBA, or Major League Baseball or NFL for that matter, are completely different. These guys, they can say their flight was canceled, but all these other teams in these major sports, their flight's not going to get canceled. It's going to take off when it can, because these are all private planes for the rest of these teams.
Yeah, I should point out the WNBA, no team is legally allowed to do private air travel, because it would be too much of a competitive advantage for rich teams over other teams that don't have the money to pay for it.
I like that. I like that rule. That's fair.
And again, I'm pointing this out as a possibility, that there's that one game that the flights are crazy delayed because of some kind of big blizzard or snowstorm or big rainstorm or hurricane or whatever, insert here. Granted, this may be a 2 to 3% chance. I am acknowledging that this is a rare event. However, it is still possible to have the game not played because the team can't be there.
Okay.
It is still
all right. So let's
a possibility. I want to throw that into your argument. That's all.
Okay. All right. Well, we can go with that. So travel aside, then, Max, what's another rebuttal that you have for this system? Travel aside.
Travel aside, my big rebuttal, especially with regular season scheduling, rivalries. Gosh, I love seeing the Capitals play the Penguins 4 to 5 times a season. I love seeing the Bruins play the Maple Leafs 4 to 5 times a season. Do I really want to watch the third installment of Canadiens, I don't know, Coyotes? Maybe this season because there's the added thing of Galchenyuk and the Domi trade. But do I really want to watch two teams that may or may not be in a playoff race battling it out for the third or fourth time?
You see, now I understand that argument, but that's going off of the current system that we have, where you don't care about the Capitals playing the Coyotes. Now with a much wider open sport, that might be a game that you might enjoy, and that's what I'm saying. You no longer have a kind of, well, all right, we're a team on the East Coast, you're playing a team on the West Coast, completely different conferences, completely different divisions. Our playoff hopes have absolutely nothing to do with their playoff hopes. Now it does. And in the NBA, you say you like to see your team playing another team, so many times. You still have each team playing each other 3 times in the NBA, 4 times for one team. So, with that 88 game format that I'm suggesting, you still have probably that 4th game for your biggest rival. The NHL, each team plays each other 3 times. And then, of course, in Major League Baseball, well, you just play everybody a bunch of times anyways. So you still get at least 3 times for each team. And again, I think having a wide open schedule like that makes more games matter against teams that you might otherwise think won't.
How do you sell that to a fan who doesn't care?
How do you sell the 10th game of a season in an 82 game format to a fan that doesn't care?
Simple. You have it against a big rival. You have rivalry games are part of the big thing that make American pro sports. I love it because, again, I'm a student at BU. I'm going to bring up a Boston example. I love it when the Yankees come to town to play the Red Sox. I love it when the Canadiens come to town to play the Bruins. Now, granted, the only time I've really cared about basketball is when the Lakers or the Warriors have come to town to play the Celtics.
Mm-hmm.
That's been fun, but again, those are West Coast teams. They only come once. I can see where it can be an interesting move for the Celtics because their big rival is really Los Angeles because of all those games in the finals when they would meet.
Mm-hmm.
I think
it's an
intriguing proposition to make everybody hate each other instead of just having intense rivalry between the Penguins and Flyers. You make a bigger rivalry between like the Penguins and, I don't know, the Avalanche, say, by having more games. I can see where that could be intriguing, but you'd have to build that with the casual fan who, looking at those Western Conference teams, especially in the first couple years of this format, might still be used to the, man, I don't want to watch this team.
Yeah. But the NHL, they recently just reorganized all that. And, now the Red Wings and the Blackhawks, they're in completely different conferences. And for a lot of people are like, all right, now, I don't like seeing, I'd rather see the Red Wings, rather than some other team in Chicago. But you still have a lot of fans going to those games. And when you say the casual fan is only going to spend the money to go to those major matchups anyways. So if you're talking about getting butts in the seats, I don't think that you're deterring anybody from coming to a game because you're still going to have that opportunity to see that big rival in your home state. So the casual fan's only ever going to spend the money to go to maybe 1-2 games a year in any of these sports. And the diehard fans are already diehard fans. So you're not going to lose any fans in the format, I don't think. And I really don't think that you're going to lose anybody coming to a game because you're still going to have the matchup there at least once or twice a year that the fans want to see.
I got one more big question for you, Keith, and it has to do with baseball.
Yep.
The rules are different in the National League and the American League with regard
to
the DH. How do you propose this be resolved?
Oh, well, I mean, now we're getting into a whole different area about all the problems that I have with the sport of baseball.
No, hang on. This is pertinent to the question because if we disassemble the National League and the American League completely, we have to come to some measure of a consensus. Are we going to have a DH or are we not going to have a DH? We have to have that if we're going to have this system.
Now, apparently, in winter meetings, that's one of the things that's going to be resolved, right? It sounds like the overwhelming, possibilities. What's that?
This year they're going to resolve that?
I read an article. I can't tell you what news source I heard this from, but I heard that Major League Baseball, they're just going to go to DH across the board in National League too. I heard that is a distinct possibility that they're going to do for, coming up to the 2019 season.
I'm sorry. Where did you hear this?
I heard it somewhere. You know what? Let's say that I didn't hear it because I would be much more in favor of losing the designated hitter. Don't like the DH. So just lose the DH.
But I love David Ortiz.
Yeah, I love David Ortiz too. But come on, the DH is in place for the pitcher, right? It's in place for the guy that can't hit. Now, if you're a pitcher, you're still a baseball player. Like a kicker, like if you're a kicker in the NFL, you're still a football player. If that return man gets to you, you're still expected to make a tackle. Are you going to make the tackle? Probably not. If he gets that far, hey, he's probably going to score on you, right? But you're still expected to make a tackle. In Major League Baseball, if you're a pitcher, hey, you should be expected to hit the ball. You should be expected to be able to do half of the sport.
All right. Keith, I want to bring up the example of Max Scherzer. Max Scherzer, this year especially, has refined his skills as a hitter to the point where he was an early candidate to be an NL MVP until the Nationals tanked, largely because of how important he's been as a batter. He came in as a pinch hitter one game, mostly because the Nationals, they were hurting at the bench position. They needed to have somebody ready, and Scherzer was ready to go because he wanted to be a complete baseball player. Max Scherzer is an anomaly. He is the exception. There are so many pitchers that when I see them come up to bat, you're either going to bunt, you're going to stink, or you're going to do something incredible, and I'm going to see it in all the highlight reels.
Mm-hmm.
I want to remove it all. I would rather see David Ortiz slug 40 home runs. I would rather see a 40 home run hitter to every team because that makes things much more interesting. Granted, I do love the strategy of the non-DH. I love the strategy of the NL teams where, well, our starter's been going great, but we have a chance to score 3 runs now, and our pitcher's coming up to bat, and he can't swing to save his life. Who can we go to on the bench, and who do we have in the bullpen? I love that chess match.
Right.
I would not mind losing it, though, in favor of a more exciting game.
Yeah, I think that's the general consensus of a lot of people. So I think eventually they're probably going to go with the DH format across the board rather than not. But again, like you said, for me, it's just in order to be a whole player, be a complete player. If you're a good pitcher, great. Work, you should still be expected to hit. You shouldn't have, especially in the American League, you shouldn't have a free pass just because of the league that you play in, and that you can't hit what you don't have to hit because you're a good pitcher and nobody expected you to be a hitter. Be a complete baseball player, gall darn it. You're a professional. You're getting paid $30 million a year just to play half of the game, to do half a job. That's what hey, in Major League Baseball, we could go all day into the things that I think should be changed. Max, one more thing for you that's going to be completely off the walls for baseball.
Bring it on.
All dimensions in the outfield, exactly the same.
Screw off. No way. Not happening. Never. No. You have just lit a fire under me. This is not happening, Keith.
Why not?
Okay. Pardon me while I crack my knuckles in my neck and assume the position, Keith, because you're about to be blasted. You are wrong. Keith.
All right.
What makes baseball a great sport?
What makes it a great sport?
I want to hear your answer, and then I want to tell you you're wrong.
I think baseball is a good sport.
Ooh.
With many flaws.
All right.
So you're asking the wrong guy why I think what makes baseball a great sport, because I don't think baseball is a great sport. I think baseball is its own sport, and I think for being what it is, it's doing just fine.
All right, then. Thank you very much for listening to the Cheap Seats podcast. I'm done. I can't work with you anymore. Nope, can't do it. I love going to a baseball game at the various parks. You know why? Mm-hmm. Because at Fenway Park, you can hit a 302-foot home run to right field, but you can hit a 419-foot out to center. I love that. I love at AT&T Park in San Francisco that you can crush one into the bay or hit one into Triples Alley in center field. I love having Wrigley Field. The outfield fences are brought in by a foot. I want each park to have its own dimensions. Each park deserves to have its own little quirks, its own little problems. Pitcher's Park, Hitter's Park, I love that strategy. You want to go to Oakland and basically play in a football stadium? Have at it. You want to play in Fenway where there's a little foul ground and a huge giant wall in left field? Absolutely. I love this part of baseball. I love that every park is different. I love having something different to talk about at every stadium. It is what separates baseball from the other three major industrial type games where everything is uniform, everything's the same. That's my one huge thing that I love about baseball, visiting all the parks because they're all different.
Now, to be completely honest with you, I'm a big stadium guy. I love stadiums, and I would absolutely agree.
Why do you want to change that?
I absolutely agree with all of your arguments when it comes to, being able to talk about it and fans being able to enjoy it and going to the different ballparks. I can't argue with that. If you're asking me one thing that makes baseball a great sport, that's one thing that makes baseball a great sport. However,
oh boy,
I cannot just continue to wrap my head around the idea. You imagine if you're in Lambeau Field and Mason Crosby's trying to kick a field goal, and it's like, well, he's lucky. He's playing in a stadium where at the 45-yard line, this is truly a 45-yard kick because the goalpost is at the goal line. So this is really a kicker. This is really a kicker's stadium, because the goalpost is on the goal line rather than being in the back of the end zone. And the goalpost at Soldier Field is angled ever so slightly to the right. So he's really going to have to pull a little bit of a hook on this one if he wants to make this 37-yard field goal. I just cannot wrap my head around it. And LeBron James, well, he's lucky he moved to Los Angeles now because the three-point line is moved in by 2.5 feet. The idea that you have all these different dimensions in a sport where numbers matter so much is amazing to me.
All right, Keith. Okay. You win at making me laugh with those. That made me laugh very hard. I'm very happy you made me laugh at those.
That's what I'm here for.
The absurdity of the argument to industrialize baseball, to make it uniform across the board. That's not how baseball is designed. Baseball is not designed to be the same at every park. Not to mention the real estate problems you'd have to have. Like if you want to extend Fenway Park's left field by like 30 feet, you're into Lansdowne Street.
Oh, you can't do it. I get it.
Can't do it. It's just not constructually possible to push back or pull in all of these walls in some of these old parks. You just can't do it.
Well, you can pull it in. You can put up pieces of plywood in an organized manner, no matter where you go. I mean, you could pull it in real easy.
You could try. I want baseball to be different. Like part of what I enjoy with baseball, especially having been a baseball broadcaster for the last few seasons, is going to each and every park and seeing, all right, what's left field? Ooh, that's a hitter's alley. Center field's deep. No one's hitting it out that way. I love doing that. There was a park at the league I worked for this past season that had 470 feet to center field. Nobody's hitting a home run that far.
What?
Nobody's hitting a home run out there. However, two dudes in the games that I called there this season crushed one to deep center, and they got either a long triple or an inside the park home run.
Why 470? Why would you possibly do that?
Great question. Ask the base designers, and which I do not have access to.
All right. Well, we got off on a tangent there late, talking about how we should make Major League Baseball stadiums uniform. That's something that I could talk about all day. That's just one of the. I have a number of issues with baseball. That's just one of the things that I have an issue with. We could go into a lot of different episodes with that.
You will never get me to agree with you on that point. I will always take the uniqueness and the ununiformity of baseball.
You know what? While we're at it, let's just make the goals in Washington bigger so Alexander Ovechkin can have more goals. Because you know what? Verizon Wireless Arena, or whatever it's called there in Washington. What is it?
One Arena now. It was Verizon.
Oh,
it was Verizon.
That's right.
Changed.
All right. Well, you know what? That's really a slap shot guys arena because the goals are bigger there. You know, it plays really well to the guys that like to shoot the puck at the net. You know. All right. Well, the bulk of this show, to kind of go back to what this show was originally intended for, was for me to try to convince Max that we should completely disband the current conference format that we have in the four major sports. I think that there's a genuine argument to be had for every single one of those teams. Now, did I spend months looking into this where I could come up with every single answer to every single loophole and idea? Absolutely not. I'm willing to work with anybody in any aspect to try to make this better. However, I think there's room to do it. So what do you guys think? Obviously, weigh into this question. This is our poll question, so go to our Facebook page and weigh into that question as well. Should we disband the conference format? Of course, you are listening to the Cheap Seats on Public House Media, presented by Squadcast. We will come back for the final segment of our show for our Wild Wednesday. This has already been a wild episode. Let's see how much more wild we can get. Come back after this.
I'm the Greg.
And I am Dave Show.
We host the Greg and Dave Show on Public House Media.
Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out our show, The Greg and Dave Show, where we talk about strange, bizarre, and sometimes just downright quirky news stories that you may not have heard about.
A new show comes out every Wednesday. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes. And hey, thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Welcome back to the Cheap Seats, everyone. Keith Haney, Max Wolpoff on this Wednesday edition of the show. We have come to the point in the show where we talk about our Wild Wednesday, and I think this has already been a Wild Wednesday, Max, that we've talked about ways to, at least I've talked about ways that we could entirely change the format of professional sports in America for at least our four major sports, and I think that I did a great job with it, and I think that everybody should be in my boat and that we should make the changes to everything tomorrow. It's good that we're on agreement with that, Max. Good. All right.
Nope. Okay, then. Thank you for listening to the Cheap Seats. We can't agree on anything. This is not. No, that's not how this works.
All right. Well, of course, what do you guys think? Weigh in on the poll question on our Facebook page, of course, and we'll see what you guys have to say there when as it comes to this topic. However, we have come to the point of the show where we talk about our Wild Wednesdays, something crazy or kooky that has happened in the last couple days or throughout the week. Max, what do you have?
Well, today I have something that is a little that's an House Media.
Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out our show, The Greg and Dave Show, where we talk about strange, bizarre, and sometimes just downright quirky news stories that you may not have heard about.
They played their round one game every Wednesday.
Be sure to subscribe on iTunes. And hey, thanks for listening to the following broadcast
300 of them
on Public
and
House
gave them
Media.
away on a first-come, first-served basis to the first 300 people to arrive at Arizona State's Wells Fargo Arena. DeAndre Ayton hasn't played a minute for the Phoenix Suns, and already he is an outspoken, I am pro-WNBA athlete. I love this. This is one of the few things that is enticing me to believe in the NBA's future.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's a great story. And one thing that you definitely have to do to ingrain yourself with a team and to get fans on your side is to go 100% in on that in the city that you're currently playing in, right? And it's a great way to do that. And of course, that aside, supporting the lesser league, when it comes to popularity, it's a huge thing for a guy in his position to do.
Now, hang on. I forgot to look this up heading into this, but hang on a second. All right. How much, oh my God. How much money is DeAndre Ayton making this season?
This season?
Yeah, just take a guess. He's on a rookie contract, keep in mind.
He is making 4.2.
He's making $8.1 million.
Oh, really? That much?
Yeah.
Oh, when you said rookie, I went way low when you said rookie.
All right. Now, hang on. I have another question. Median salaries in the WNBA are what?
37,500.
Okay, you're really lowballing it. 71,000.
Oh, really? Oh, man.
So that's the median salary for being a WNBA player this season. And DeAndre Ayton is already making nearly over 10 times that.
Probably over 10 times what the team as a whole is making, right? He's probably making more by himself than the entire team is making combined for the year for the WNBA.
It fascinates me so much that in a land as rich as the NBA, they can't still put money in the WNBA, which I will still argue is a better basketball product. Yep, you're getting me on this, so it's good to stop this train at station 1, and I'm not going to go any further than this.
You're a big fan of 50 style basketball. Dribble, dribble, pass, dribble, dribble, shoot. You know,
I'm a big
fundamentals.
I'm a big fan of A, yes, fundamentals, and B, competitive games.
Okay.
Anyhow.
All right. Well, all right.
All right.
Well, we'll agree to disagree on that one and save that for another show.
Yeah, basketball, we will save this for a very different show. All right. Yeah. I've brought up how an NBA rookie is basically buying playoff tickets for the local WNBA franchise. Keith, what have you got this week?
We have a true freshman walk-on quarterback that has just won the starting job in the Big Ten for a Big Ten team.
That's unheard of.
Minnesota Golden Gophers, of course, PJ Fleck.
It's Minnesota.
They still have to play in the Big Ten. They're still playing Wisconsin, Ohio State, Michigan.
Yeah, allegedly. So does Maryland, but we all know what's going on with that. All right. Anyway, what did you say the guy's name was? I'm sorry to take his thunder here.
Zach Annexstad. He's Annexstad.
How do I
ANNEXSTAD. Alexstad. I added an N there on the end.
Annexstad.
Zach Alexstad.
Okay. Interesting.
He's going to be the starting quarterback for the Gophers against now New Mexico State. Now you could, maybe, this is PJ Fleck just, mixing it up a bit until he goes with another guy under scholarship, because obviously how much damage can you do against New Mexico State that you can't come back from, 3 quarters. But I think it's a great idea for PJ Fleck to, if nothing else, to mix things up. But I think it's a great story. How often, like you said, it's unheard of that you have a true freshman in some places start for a large Division I program, much less a guy that's not even on scholarship that hasn't taken a snap. However, what might even be more wild is that Minnesota is dealing with all freshmen. They do not have one quarterback on the roster right now that has played a snap of college football. So I think that's even a little more wild.
Yeah, and there are 2 other teams in college football this year, as I'm reading the Sports Illustrated article you posted in the rundown, that have 0 combined pass attempts in all of college football, and that's Kentucky and Nebraska.
Right.
Wow.
Nebraska too, even. That's crazy that for a program. Now, I know Nebraska hasn't been Nebraska since the 90s, but that's even crazy to think that Nebraska doesn't have a guy with college experience either. That's something else.
Yeah, and 2 Big Ten teams at that.
Right. But one more thing to add to this before we move on is that Alexstad, he is not some guy that walked on to Minnesota because he's some local legend that the coaching staff heard of because he's also in Minneapolis. This is a guy that was a 3-star recruit that played that was the starting quarterback at IMG. Now, for those of you that don't know what IMG is, it's a boarding school for athletes, and about 10 guys every year come and play Division I program out of that school. So for me, it's even crazy to think that this kid, Alexstad, had to be a walk-on at Minnesota after being a 3-star recruit after playing for one of the top high schools in the country. I don't know what's going on here, but hey, that's why we call it Wild Wednesday.
Exactly. That's the spirit of the day.
All right. Well, I had a great day with you, Max.
I'm happy
talking about how we should completely change the scope and the forecast of sports as we know it in America, and it's good to know that I have your 100% support. Are
you listening at all?
All right. All right. Before I upset Max any further, I think it's best that we end this show where it is, and while I'm still not quite so far in the hole that I dug myself in for this episode. Everyone, this has been the Cheap Seats on Public House Media with Keith Haney and Max Wolpoff. Of course, don't forget to check out our Facebook page and weigh in on the poll question there. Of course, check out our show on Spotify, on iTunes, on the Google Store, and definitely don't forget to check out some of the cool things that we have at the Public House Media Store as well at phmedia.com. Everyone have a great week. Don't forget to check out the show on Friday and upcoming Monday, and we will see you again, as always, next Wednesday for more of Cheap Seats with Keith and Max. Everyone have a good one, and we will see you later.